Hey folks, so this is a current events politics chart. This is about Matt Whitaker, the Attorney General that was just appointed. And that's literally all this is about, that and some speculation about what's going to happen over the course of the next few weeks. So if, excuse me, if this is not your cup of tea, go ahead and turn the video off and go on to something else and wait for next month when we have more horoscope-y stuff. But for those of you who are interested in current events and how astrology plays out, and what we might be able to speculate is going to happen, stick around, and because we're about to open up that can of worms. The actual physical chart itself, if you want to follow along, I will have a copy of it on the Patreon page that's open to the public, so you don't need to be a subscriber to have access to the chart that I'm looking at. If you want to look at that and follow along with this, so you don't have to look at me, you can just listen to my voice while I'm talking. And I apologize, I don't have, I'm still trying to get my OBS studio system program set up. It's a little weird. I'm not a big tech person, so I have to wait for somebody to give me a hand with that. So unfortunately, I'm not able to put the chart on the screen right now while we're talking. Okay, so now let's see what Matt Whitaker's got going on. So apparently, as it turns out, Matt Whitaker has quite the colorful history that involves fraud himself as a participant. And not to mention that his appointment to the position of Attorney General is seriously questioned because of the way it's been handled, and apparently it's in violation of the rules about how these things are supposed to be handled. So clearly his hold on this position is tenuous at best. So with that said, and I thought this was interesting because he came on board while Uranus was retrograde and Jupiter had just changed signs. There was a lot of stuff happening, major shifting of great tectonic plates beneath the surface. And also, almost forgot, Neptune is making its station. Neptune is retrograde. It will be making its station and go direct at the end of the month. So we're feeling that Neptune station now. So, and we knew there's going to be a whole lot of shenanigans and a lot of fishy stuff going on around the time of the midterms. So it is interesting at best, all that is going on and coming to the surface about who this person is and what they represent, separate from how they got their position. And by the way, we are under a Mercury station. Mercury will station retrograde around the 15th to the 16th. So we are filling it now. So he was effectively put into this position while Mercury is coming to a standstill and about to go retrograde. Okay, so first things first, let's take a look at who this man is. So one of the things we want to look at, since he was a personal appointment by 45, we kind of want to see like what connections these two people have between their charts, and whether these are strong and favorable connections or, unstable ones at best, temporary passing friendships, as it were. So the first thing that comes up very, very prominently between these two charts is they have a Uranus-Neptune conjunction across the charts. So this is interesting, one, because it's a generational aspect, but the other thing is that with Uranus and Neptune, these are two wildly different energies. Uranus, which is Matt's planet, is the planet of rude awakenings, but more than that, it's also the planet of truth and honesty and really putting your business out there, as it were. This does not appear to be Matt's personal motto through life, but he certainly appears to be very self-directed. So he doesn't have a lot of, for somebody who is in a position of authority, doesn't seem to have a lot of respect for other people as authorities over his life. Now, with it conjunct somebody else's Neptune, in this case 45s, the thing about it is these energies become very pronounced, right? So one of the things that we would look for is there is the distinct possibility that Matt Whitaker may do an about face on Trump and rip away the veils of illusion, as it were, in the name of honesty and fairness and all that sort of stuff. Uranus is very unpredictable, and Uranus hates dishonesty. Uranus is a very honest planet. It's a pain. But it's a very honest planet. And Neptune, likes to goose the truth a little bit here and there. So with the Uranus-Neptune conjunction across the charts, one of the things that I would expect to see is Uranus deliberately or accidentally and inadvertently, like ripping away the veils of illusion and exposing truths that the Neptune person would much rather not have exposed. So this is the combination they share across the charts. And that was interesting. So then, of course, we say to ourselves, well, wait a minute, if that's the case, like, why would this man ever put him in this kind of position? Like, what on earth was he thinking? Well, Chuchi Pie, they have a Jupiter-Jupiter conjunction. So Jupiter aspects between charts are always very, very nice. They're very easy. They feel good. We love Jupiter contacts with other people. It's a very feel-good connection. For better or worse, it's a feel-good connection. And we tend to be a lot more generous and forgiving when there's Jupiter present between, like making contacts between charts. With a Jupiter-Jupiter conjunction, there is this there's this tendency to overinflate each other because Jupiter likes to blow things up like a balloon, right? But now you've got both of them doing this to each other. So the problem with Jupiter-Jupiter combinations is that the two people are usually so busy building each other up like a couple of cheerleaders that they don't know when to stop, so it's literally too much of a good thing. And so this, of course, now makes all kinds of sense why they would be so attracted to each other, and certainly why Trump would feel so good about putting him in this particular position. The other thing is that Matt Whitaker, we don't have a time of birth for him. So based on what we do have setting the chart up for noon, because it's the middle of the day, so we're going to pick the halfway point between morning and evening. Matt Whitaker most likely has the moon in mid to late Gemini, possibly early Cancer, but definitely in those later degrees of Gemini, which is going to put that moon right there with Trump's sun. Anytime you have a sun-moon conjunction between charts, this is somebody you feel comfortable with, because it's the whole anima animus thing. You feel like you're complementary to each other. You don't get in each other's way. The sun leads, the moon follows. So Whitaker, with his moon in late Gemini conjuncting Trump's sun, Whitaker would feel very comfortable following Trump's lead, because that's the way the sun and the moon operate with each other, and it's a very comfortable place for them to be. Now, some of the other things in this in this lovely chart. So remember we were talking about the Uranus-Neptune conjunction. I was saying like that could be a little problematic down the road, right? The other thing that shows up between these two that may not be obvious in the very beginning is there is a Mars-Neptune square between our charts as well. So Trump's Mars squares Whitaker's Neptune. And in this particular case, because Mars, in anybody's chart, when you're doing relationship analysis, Mars is always the more assertive planet, and Neptune is very passive. So Mars will have a tendency to ride roughshod over the Neptune person. With a Mars-Neptune square across the charts, there's always this sense that the two people are working at cross purposes, or that they're not quite seeing eye to eye, or Mars gets very pushy and assertive, or overly assertive, aggressive even, and the Neptune person will not respond openly and in direct attack, but will instead become very passive aggressive. If that is the case, then that Uranus-Neptune conjunction we were talking about earlier is definitely something that will come into play, and not in a way that benefits 45. So he may have really made a huge mistake. Out of all the gin joints in town, you had to pick this one. He may have really made a huge mistake picking this one to put in this position, assuming that the guy is even able to stay, right? So these are some basic little interesting bon mots between the charts. And certainly there are other things that are more supportive and workable and all that sort of stuff, but they're easy aspects, and they're very supportive aspects, so they're not very interesting aspects, because they're not very big dynamic stuff, which is why we're not going to get into it too much. Okay. So now we're looking at the transits. So we know Whitaker was put into this position when Jupiter entered 0 Sagittarius. And Uranus was at 2955 Aries. Uranus had just backed up into Aries. So now, the thing about it is when you start an event, that is its own birth chart or birth moment, right? So the minute Whitaker was appointed to this job and accepted, and it was announced when Jupiter went into Sagittarius, this officially becomes the blueprint for Whitaker's career as the Attorney General. So we can use that day, time, and aspects as a time map for how his career in that particular position is going to go. So one of the things, there's a couple of things interesting about what's going on right now. So at the time that Whitaker was put into this position, Mars was opposing 45's Mars. So there's a lot of rash and impulsive decisions that were happening at this time. As we move through the month, I'm not completely sure this guy's going to last through the month, and here's why. When we get down around the 15th to 16th, which is in a week, 2 weeks, Mercury will go retrograde at 13 Sagittarius. Venus will go direct at 25 Libra. These are some very important stations. And remember, Neptune is going direct at the end of the month at 13 Pisces, like right behind it. So one of the first things that we see is this Venus station direct. So Venus, Whitaker came in under a Venus retrograde, which means that there's a lot being hidden, right? It's like the joke about the girl you take home and she looks beautiful and gorgeous, and then the next morning without her makeup and her fake eyelashes and her girdle and everything else, you're looking at a completely different person. It's not the person you brought home. And that's kind of Venus retrograde in action. And he was hired or appointed under Venus retrograde, and Venus is about to go direct. So whatever it is that 45 just signed on with, it's all going to be on the table, because now you married it, you're stuck with it. This all be on the table in about a week. So does this make sense in terms of the charts? Well, Venus station direct at 25 will station right on top of on top of Matt Whitaker's Mercury at 25 Libra. So this theoretically should be good, at least for Matt. But his personal Mercury squares Mars. So as an individual with this Mercury square Mars and cardinal signs, he is a bit hot-tempered, and Mercury and Libra tends to be more careful about how they speak. However, they're very aggressive in their thinking and very self-serving with this particular combination. They're very, very calculated in their thinking. So with Venus conjuncting his Mercury, which should be a good thing, as it makes it station, it is also squaring his Mars. So he is getting a Venus station direct square natal Mars. This is going to give him a whole lot of unfriendly pushback from people around him. So his relationships with people around him, because of his choices of words, because of his communications, because of his agreements, anything that has to do with things that he has represented or misrepresented about himself in a very calculated way, Mercury, Mars, Libra, Capricorn, this is all going to be on the table and have to be dealt with. Now, while this is happening, this Venus station direct will also be squaring 45's Venus, okay, and Saturn. So 45 is going to be feeling this much worse than Whitaker is. So whatever's going on with this Venus station on top of Whitaker's Mercury, it is also making a simultaneous square to 45's Venus and Saturn, which really is going to hurt him where he is the most sensitive. So money, family, relationships, and approval. Venus, Saturn conjunct in Cancer is very much about approval. All of these things are really going to hit the fan, as it were. Now, the other things that are happening. So Mercury will be stationing retrograde at 13 Sag. Now, in Whitaker's chart, we're not really seeing anything obvious here as far as that Mercury with 13 Sag. So this is not really hurting him so much. I mean, he's being challenged and certainly he's getting some pushback, but we're not seeing a whole lot of changes other than that, or certainly nothing that's really challenging him. However, that Mercury station retrograde will be opposing 45's Uranus. So 45 is, and it's signs Sagittarius and Gemini, and Uranus is truth, and so is Sagittarius, and Mercury is all about words and documents. So right about this time, around the 15th or 16th, when these two planets are making their station, 45 should be really having his feet put to the fire and having a whole lot of uncomfortable truths being put out there, whether he wanted them to be or not, or certainly a real hard attempt at trying to hide these things. Now, remember, Neptune will station direct at the end of the month, and Neptune will station direct at 13 Pisces. When Neptune goes down and stations direct at 13 Pisces, it will also repeat this theme in 45's chart because it will square his Uranus. It's a little wide, but it's a Neptune station, so he's definitely feeling it. So I would look for events around those days, especially where it concerns those two, because this will come back to continue or echo in 45's life a couple of weeks later, or like about a week and a half later. Now, here's the other thing I want you guys to be aware of. Around these same days, like around the 16th, remember, Whitaker was appointed when Jupiter went to 0 Sagittarius. Jupiter just entered the sign the position of 0 Sagittarius. Around the 15th to 16th, with these two planetary stations going on, Mercury and Venus, guess what? Mars will hit 0 Pisces, squaring that Jupiter at 0 Sag. Remember, the minute you start something, that becomes its own birth chart. So Jupiter at 0 Sag is part of this time map for Whitaker's position as the Attorney General. So anything that hits that 0 degree Sag point in his chart, it's a very sensitive point. Mars, the planet of cutting and separation, will be at 0 Pisces, making a very hard, difficult aspect, a square, to that Jupiter 0 Sag degree. So it is entirely possible that Mr. Whitaker might not have a job or be informed that he does not have a job at this time. Or more importantly, because this, in some ways, this benefits him because he's not taking this nearly as hard as 45 is in the middle of the month. So this could also be that he is forced to recuse himself from anything to do with Trump, which gets him off the hook in terms of getting on 45's bad side. So it would save his political career, but it also allows him the ability to stay in his job, so he doesn't have to lose face, as it were, by being forced to resign for obvious reasons. So it will be interesting to see. Now, if this is not how this pans out, and he is in fact not fired or removed from his position by the middle of the month, come December, we've got some major aspects going on that are going to, again, hit these charts. So I don't think that Whitaker will even be around come December, January, but that's a stretch. So if he makes it that far, I'm going to be really impressed. And it could only be because we have a whole bunch of other stuff going on. But let's see if he manages to survive past the middle of this month, around the 15th to the 16th. And if he does that, then let's see what happens with 45 come the end of the month when Neptune goes direct. Because all of these themes are echoing through the month. So if you want to see the chart so you can follow along, take a look for yourself, I will have it up on the Patreon page. And that's it. So let's grab some popcorn and watch the show.